be with you today. I hope you've been having a great conference and we're getting lots of information and jewels and wisdom. So I'm gonna jump right into what I'm here to talk about with y'all tonight. So the title of this workshop is Let Go, Let Goddess, which is the name of my company, Instagram, Facebook, website, everything. Let Go, Let Goddess. And it is a concept that I'm extremely passionate about. And I'm gonna break it down to you today exactly what that means and why. Okay, so well, she read my bio, so I'm not going to go through all of this. But I am a sacred femininity healer. Women hire me to help them release their blockages so that they can awaken their feminine energy and sensual energy to live a life of bliss. Okay, so tonight we're going to discuss 3 major blockages holding women back from getting the love, abundance, and I didn't say this in the video, but I'm adding it now, orgasmic juiciness they deserve, because part of what I focus on a lot with women is sacred sexuality, which I think Nikisha mentioned definitely. All right, so we're going to talk about what are some of those major blockages that are holding us back from basically experiencing the best things in life. All right. So before we get all the way into that, I'm going to share a little bit of my story and how I came to study sacred sex and Tantra and Taoism and all that good stuff. So even though I have my own life coaching company and I've coached hundreds of women around the world, and I've had retreats in places like Jamaica, Bali, and Puerto Rico, and even though currently I help women to awaken their sexual energy to heal themselves, it was not always this way. Okay, so some of you can relate to this story. I grew up very Christian, and I was taught, and I believe, no sex before marriage, right? And because I was a prototypical good girl, I basically followed that, right? I did what I was told to do because that's what good girls do. So I was very good daughter. I was honor roll student, you know, A's and B's always. My mother was so proud of me. But despite this, I still had a very strong sexual energy inside of me. But I repressed it and I buried it inside because I wanted to wait for Mr. Right, right? Be married before I had sex. So I was a virgin actually until I was 22 years old. Yes. And this is why I would have never thought that I'd become a sacred sexual teacher, because I didn't have sex for a while. All right. Just type a 1 in the chat if you can relate to that. If you relate to maybe growing up, you know, very rigid or very, and you know, any good girls in the house, feel free to let me know you're out there and type it in the chat. Yes, I see Veronica says, yep. All right. Kimberly says, I see you, sis. Hey. Yes, yes, yes. So a lot of us, you know, particularly for young women more than men, we're taught that, you know, our sexual energy is almost like a burden. It's almost like a curse, and you got to be really scared of it, right? So a lot of repression happens. Ursula says, I grew up Christian, encouraged to wait for marriage. All right, yes. So though as I became older and, you know, went through different changes in life, I was no longer Christian. However, I was very repressed and very rigid. And I call myself, or that self back then, I call her the Afrocentric nun, right? Because even though I wasn't like Christian nun, I was now Afrocentric nun. So I had the head wraps, and you see, I got the Malcolm X t-shirt on, and that's my hand on my hip, and a long skirt, and then my hand on my son's stroller, right? Not that anything is wrong with any of that, right? You could have all of that on and still be like, you know, connected to your power, right? But for me, it was almost like a mask. It was almost like armor, right? That I was really holding my energy back. Trevor Barnes says, yep, I was a virgin until I was 36 years old and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I understand. Yes. So I married the first man who I ever had sex with. And then I basically, during the marriage, I began to lose myself. We had a son, and I became very engulfed with motherhood and being a wife. And slowly I noticed the me who I used to be began to drift away. Now, and college, I was actually an actress. I was a theater major, I was a performer, and I was a poet, and I graduated from NYU with honors in theater. And as I was in this relationship, being a mother, being a wife, all of that stopped. All the performing stopped. My voice basically got shut down. I had a degree in theater, right, from one of the top theater schools in the country, and I was afraid to express my voice. As a poet, I would go to open mics, and open mics was sign your name on the list, and then you get up and you do your thing, and I couldn't do it. Like I literally could. I was afraid to even write my name on the list, which is a huge difference from how I was. Even though I was repressed sexually, I was expressing a lot of my energy through my creativity, right, as a performer. And now even that was shut down. So I was like, something has to change. Type in the chat, anybody relates to that, being in a relationship or being a mother and losing yourself, right? And maybe your voice shutting down. Actually, during my last year of marriage, I got laryngitis, probably like at least 3 or 4 times, where I literally like lost my voice. I could not speak. And studying spirituality, I knew that the voice connects to the throat chakra, which is the energy center in your throat. And when you are shut down there, it's basically like you're not speaking your truth. You're not expressing your truth. So I looked at where my husband and I seemed to be heading. And I realized that even though he was, he was a great guy, he was a good guy, he was not the man for me in terms of compatibility and life term goals. And it just wasn't a fulfilling, satisfying relationship. I also knew I didn't know who I was as a woman. So I needed to leave this marriage. And, that was my journey, to leave the marriage so that I could discover who I was. Right. So at age 27, I left my marriage. It was one of the hardest decisions in my life, but I knew that I could not become the woman whom I needed to be by staying in that relationship. I knew it was something was calling me. My inner goddess needed to be awakened. Seeing something in the chat. Kimberly says spirit equals life, lost voice to correlation. Wow. Yes. Yes. A lot of times when we have illnesses that show up in our body through a spiritual lens, there's always a root that is spiritual or emotional, especially when it's something that's chronic and keeps coming up. So I knew that my inner goddess needed to be awakened. So at this time, when I left the marriage, I discovered sacred sexuality and the tantric and Taoist practices. So I feel like this pathway, which I'll talk more about tonight, what that means, it merged the 2 parts of me because I've always been very spiritual. I'm a Pisces. I don't know if any other Pisces or water signs out there, but I've always been very spiritual. And that's why I was so devout as a Christian. When I was Christian, did not have sex, right? I was always very spiritual and always like secretly sensual and secretly sexual. I had been orgasmic since I was 4 years old, which felt really strange, at that time. I didn't know what was happening, but I would self-pleasure myself as a young child, just innocently, and I was able to bring myself to orgasm. But as I got older and I was taught that masturbation was evil and was bad and you shouldn't do it and I began to feel a lot of shame. All right. So leaving this marriage and leaving kind of this past behind, it helped me to embark upon this new path of studying sacred sexuality. I went on a journey to heal and awaken my sacred sexual energy, and I discovered ancient practices that uncorked my sexual energy and how to walk in my goddess power. And I also experienced other sexual partners, right? I was able to express myself and experience the beauty of sex, right? Which is something that I hadn't really connected to before in different men and different lovers, and discover what I like, what I don't like, and it was a very healing experience. So this picture that I have on the PowerPoint right here is actually me on stage. I began performing again. Ursula says Scorpio here, yay! Scorpios have a lot of sexual energy. I know that's like this Scorpio stereotype. So I joined a erotic poetry show. and I would perform erotic poetry there. And also I danced a couple of times. So this is me on stage with booty shorts on and fishnet stockings, which I would have never done before. I would have never done that. But having gone through those changes really helped me to love my body, right? And to embrace, who I was and to lose the shame. Trevor says Gemini here. Yes, I love Geminis. I have very good Gemini friends. Two of my best friends are Geminis. I find that Geminis are very loyal. However, I will never date a male Gemini. That's like my one sign, not for dating, but for friends, Geminis are amazing. I love y'all. All right, so as I went through my process, my friends noticed my transformation and noticed I was happier and that I was free, because I was so rigid. I was vegan, and not there's anything wrong with being vegan. I'm not vegan anymore. I was vegan for like 7-8 years, but I was just very like rigid. And so my friends began to notice that I was blossoming into a different woman. And I had a friend who suggested I teach other women. And at the time, I was a public school teacher, I was a full-time teacher. And I was like, if I can teach middle school kids, then I can teach anybody, because they crazy, right? So after several years of working on myself, I began to coach other women. And this is where I founded my company, Let Go, Let Goddess. And I've studied with many different teachers. One of the things mentioned in my bio, I did adult tantra training in Thailand for 5 weeks in 2017. So, I've been blessed to have many different teachers and guides to be able to learn to awaken my feminine energy, my sacred sexual energy in a way that is healing. And I think that is one of the biggest things I want to share tonight, is that there is healing power in our sexual energy, healing for ourselves, right? A lot of times when you think about sex, or we're taught, especially as women, it's about pleasing the man, right? And turning your man on and things like that, which nothing wrong with that. Like, there's a place for, being a comfortable and a confident lover, right? However, within the path of sacred sexuality and tantra, I discovered that, wow, my sexual energy can feed me, right? It could be the energy that I use to nurture myself. So it was very beautiful. So over the past 10 years, as I mentioned, I went from rigid and unhappy and shut down and sexually repressed to being full body, orgasmic, free, and in love with life. And I can do it. You can do it too. But first you have to create the space through which to do it. Okay. So as I said, tonight, we're going to go through the major blockages that are holding women back from experiencing the love, the abundance, orgasmic juiciness, right? All the good things in life. So as you can see here, blockage number 1 is you're too stressed. And we're going to talk about what the stress response is and how it affects our bodies. We know that at this time right now, especially with, the corona virus happening, going on, like there's a lot of stress, and many of us are experiencing stress. But we have to find ways to release it, because it's going to have many effects on us. We're going to talk about. So let's talk about, why do we have stress in the first place? What is a stress response? So long ago, humans developed a fight or flight response to dangers in prehistoric times. So you see the lion, right? It's imagine you're in the jungle and the lion, you see a lion, the lion starts chasing you. What's going to happen? Your heart is going to beat really fast, right? Adrenaline is going to pump. The blood is going to go into your muscles, and your body has to decide whether it's going to fight this lion or run away. It's going to flee, right? Fight or flight. So at that point, it's not about logical thinking. It's like split second decision. Your body is now in a stress response, right? Your breath is rapid, muscles tense, heart is racing. And that was because your body needed those resources, right? Pumping all that blood into your muscles to decide if it was going to run or flee or fight, flight or fight. So this stress response is controlled by our sympathetic nervous system. And when we're stressed, our body produces stress-like hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. So these hormones are what causes blood pressure to elevate. I don't know if there's anybody here who has high blood pressure. That is definitely, characteristic of a chronic stress response. Veronica says stress is real. Stress is very real. So it causes our blood pressure to spike, pupils to dilate, get really wide because you're trying to see what the hell is going on. Your muscles get very tense. Your digestion slows down, which is something I learned in massage school. I don't know if a lot of people know that you may feel it intuitively, like when you're stressed, your eating is kind of messed up, right? You may bloat, you may have gas, you may become constipated, or even the opposite. Sometimes people get like diarrhea, right? I know when I get stressed, it affects my stomach. Sometimes, I can't eat, right? And our heart rate increases. So we have very physical reactions to stress. So this stress response, though, in terms of our evolution, is a good thing, because you're in the jungle, you're getting chased by a lion. You ain't got time to think. You're not trying to reason with the lion. You're not trying to be logical with the lion. It's just none of that, right? You need to run, get your ass out of there, or get eaten, or just freeze, or try to fight this lion off. But this response that in life or death situations is necessary and keeps us alive right now is actually killing a lot of us. 75 to 90% of all doctor visits are for stress-related ailments and complaints from the National Institute on Mental Health. So being stressed can lead to lots of ailments like headaches, upset stomach, like talked about, high blood pressure, asthma, skin conditions, low libido, and chest pain. And your immune system drops. Most of us have probably experienced that. You're stressed out and you're in a high, or you got a high stress job. Maybe you always got a cold, or you always have a cough, right? You're always having some type of response to physical ailment that's rooted in your stress. So stress becomes really negative when a person has continuous challenges without relaxation or relief. That means that you're constantly just being bombarded by stress. And as I said, it's an adaptive mechanism to preserve our life. But for many of us, this stress response stays on and is constantly activated. And we experience chronic stress and we don't even know. Okay. And chronic stress is maladaptive because our bodies are consistently being flooded with stress hormones, right? You're always under stress. A lot of times people don't even realize it, and this is something that we have to bring awareness to, because if you are stressed because you're experiencing different problems, like, I talk about here, could be financial problems, relationship issues, children, family, health concerns, co-workers, the Rona, right? Being in quarantine, any of that, you're experiencing that. These problems, they're not like the lion, right? The stress response is not meant to be on all the time when nature, blessed us with this. The stress response is supposed to be like lion, run or fight or freeze or whatever. And then when the stressor is gone, lion went away. He went to the bush. He decided he wasn't going to eat us today. And then it's like, whew, all right, back to, being normal, maybe hunting something else, right? But the problems that a lot of us have in our modern culture, like financial issues, relationship issues, these threats are more consistent, right? We experience them a lot. So as opposed to just releasing hormones, these stress hormones when we're being chased by a lion, we're feeling it constantly. And this is where they have a negative effect upon our health. And they're actually a little harder to fight than the lion. So how much of your energy is caught up in stress and trauma, right? A lot of us have experienced trauma that gets triggered when we are under a stressful situation, trauma that we've never healed from, we've never released. You can have stress response to past relationships, or trauma you're holding from past relationships, bosses, children, negative emotions coming to you like worry, fear, and anxiety. So I like to do a stress check whenever I do this. So, because I think it's important for us to have awareness of this, and then we have the energy to then transform it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your stress response? So 1 is like, I'm like on the beach in Jamaica. Like, that's how I feel. And then 10 is like, I'm about to go postal on some body and go like the fuck off, right? What is your level of stress? You could type in the chat 1 to 10. Okay, Veronica says 7, you know. And this can vary too, you know, certain times maybe more or less. Ursula says it's 3. Okay, cool, cool, cool. And it's good to do these stress level checks so you see where you are, because sometimes, like I said, we're not aware of it. And if we're not aware of it, then we cannot transform it. Okay. So to stress less, one thing that we have to do is begin to have awareness of it and to call our energy back to us, right? Find yourself in the present moment and create from that space. And if you're constantly stressed, then you're not going to have the energy to create the life that you desire. You're not going to have the energy to attract love and to manifest love or abundance, or even sexually. If you're tense as a woman, most of the time you cannot orgasm. Men are different. Men are wired a little differently. A lot of men, like, they have sex and they're like, to release their stress inside of you, which is not good either, right? So we want to become aware of our stress level so that we can reclaim our time, right? Reclaim our bodies so that we're not in this state all the time. Travis says, I was at an 8 all week. I'm at about a 5 now. Yay! Yes, yes, yes. Good, good, good. All right, so now we're going to talk about blockage number 2. Which actually connects to blockage number 1. That's keeping us back from manifesting love, abundance, orgasmic juiciness, being disconnected from our feminine energy. So we live in a culture that prioritizes masculine energy and ways of being over feminine. So the average woman experiences blockages that often show up as feeling overstressed, issues with finances and relationships, and womb issues. All of these are interconnected. So let's talk about, so that we're all on the same page, what is feminine energy and what is masculine energy. And before I say this, I want to say, of course, we all have both, all right? We all have feminine and masculine energy. Some people have more masculine energy. Some people have more feminine energy, and it's fine. As women, generally speaking, the ancients saw women as the representatives of feminine energy, okay? So as somebody who identifies as a woman, it's very important for us to cultivate that feminine energy if we want to come into our power. And because our Western world is very masculine, it can be very challenging, such as the stress. You know, having that stress, that's like being in a high stress state is very masculine. It's not feminine. So we need to get out of that. So let's talk about, I mentioned that I studied Tantra and Taoism. So I'm going to explain what feminine and masculine energy is from a Taoist perspective. And Taoism is based upon the ancient Chinese philosophies, thousands of years old. They had ideas about what feminine and masculine energy is and was. So if you are familiar with acupuncture or feng shui, you know, those type of Asian arts, they're all rooted in Taoism. So in Taoism, they believe that all of the world, the whole creation, is made up of 2 primal energies, yin energy and yang energy. So you see on the left is a circle of yin and yang, basically. So this is a very familiar symbol. You probably have seen it before. Maybe you understood what it meant. Maybe you didn't understand what it meant, or maybe you never saw it before. I'm breaking down what it means. So yin and yang means shadow and light, respectively. So these forces are feminine and masculine forces, sometimes seen as opposite, but they are in fact complementary and interdependent. They need each other. So if you look at the circle, you see that there is a part of the circle that is white, right? It's the white side of the circle, and that represents the yang energy or the masculine energy. Then you see another part of the circle, the other half is dark, and that represents the yin energy or the feminine energy. So if you also notice in yin, there's a circle of yang, right? There's a spot of yang. And in yang, there's a spot of yin. So this tells you that within, that's why I said we're all both. Within yin, there is yang. Within yang, there is yin. Because yin and yang need each other, right? Feminine and masculine energy are interdependent. And they're all always changing and is always flowing. So let's break this down a little bit more. So yin, as I said, is connected to feminine energy, is seen to be slow, soft, yielding, diffuse, cold, wet, and passive. And is associated with water, the earth, the moon, femininity, and nighttime. So you see the image on the slideshow. This is like what yin energy looks and feels like. It's stillness, quiet. You can even say submissive, soft. You see the moon, you see the darkness, you see the water. Water is extremely characteristic of feminine energy. And as you can, if you think about these characteristics of yin, you can see that in the Western world, it's not prized. We don't prize being slow and being soft and being yielding, right? We don't prize feminine energy. It's why women have to fight, for rights and equality, because in the Western world, women, this type of energy is not valued. Very masculine and dominant. And this is why the quarantine was actually very interesting, because it forced so many of us to actually be yin. Like we had to stay our ass home, like even if we didn't want to. We had to be still. We had to it was like the whole world was on timeout, right? That's yin. And then we have yang, which, as you can guess, is the opposite. It is fast. It is hard. It's solid. It's focused. It's hot. It's dry and aggressive. It is associated with fire, the sky, the sun, masculinity, and daytime. So we need yang too. So not to be like yin is good and yang is bad, because that's not what the case. We need masculine energy. We need the hot energy. We need that solid, focused energy. We need fire. We need the sky. We need all of this. However, it's just that aggression of masculine energy. Some people call it toxic masculine energy, is very much so like prized and rewarded in the West. So we want more balance. So women, as I mentioned, are characterized by yin, and I'll explain why. So overall, generally speaking, our bodies are soft as opposed to men's bodies. If you look at our reproductive organs, our vaginas, we say yoni in Tantra, our vaginas are internal, right? Our reproductive organs are more so inside of our body. We have to get a mirror. We want to look down and see what's happening there. Men are different. They look down, they say the penis is there, the balls is there, is yang, is outside of the body. So we are the receptive energy, right? If we're having sex with a man, we're receiving his penis. So, right, we are yin. And we are wet. When a woman is sexually aroused, what happens? She gets wet. So cultivating this energy just has many benefits for our psyche, for our body, and for our mind. And the moon and the waters of the earth and the earth itself has long been associated with the goddess, with feminine energy. And men are the opposite, and they're equally beautiful, right? Generally speaking, men's bodies are harder, they're more muscular. I'm a massage therapist, and when I was massaging people, before quarantine, like massaging a man's body was way different than massaging a woman's body. Like there is just different, types of musculature and the way they're formed. Their bodies are more solid, they're harder, right? Their muscles are bigger. They get hard when they're sexually aroused, when we get wet. So this is kind of, just showing how men are yang. And male energy has long been associated with the sun and the sky. All right. So when a woman is connected to her divine feminine energy, it's much easier for her to manifest love and abundance, and her orgasmic juiciness becomes, that her ability to be orgasmic becomes easier. It is actually the nature of feminine energy to be abundant, to be orgasmic. And I think I have a quote. Yes, I do. Um, so this is a quote about the nature of and the power of women's sexual energy. And this is from a book called Taoist Secrets of Love, Cultivating Male Sexual Energy by Mantak Chia and Michael Wen, two of my teachers. So this quote says, the sexual imbalance between men and women is obvious. A woman can sexually receive her man for as long as she pleases, and thus Taoists say her yin essence is nearly inexhaustible. A man's lovemaking is limited to the amount of energy he has to keep his erection. His yang essence is more easily tired. A woman is sexually stronger than a man because biologically she needs to be. At heart, most men are terrified of a woman's infinite sexual capacity as they are fascinated by it. And this is why I believe Western culture, see, somebody say he fine. He was fine. This is why Western culture seeks to control women's sexuality, because deep down inside, men, patriarchy, they're scared as fuck of women's sexual power. They are. I'm sure we've experienced, right? It says, he has a limited amount of sexual energy, right? That erection can real quick. In Taoism, they say, when a woman is very wet and very watery, that her yin essence, right, her waters can put out his fire. And that's what happens when a man, you have sex with a man and then he ejaculates very quickly. Like, the waters have put out his fires, like it's a wrap. Like, and this is why in philosophies like Taoism and Tantra, feminine energy is held up, is worshipped, is seen as powerful and beautiful. And women in Tantra, they literally worship women. And it doesn't even matter, her size don't matter, she's a goddess. Every woman in Tantra is considered to be a goddess because she is a woman. It don't matter if she high class, low class, skinny, fat, it doesn't matter. She has a yoni, she has a vagina, she is worshipped as a goddess. And women in Tantra and Taoism are considered to be the ones who actually initiate the men into the sexual secrets. Women are considered to basically be a natural because we're feminine, right? Because we come from the feminine space. It's kind of easier for us to enter the spiritual realm, which you may have seen. You definitely probably have experiences. If anybody's been in a church, you know what I mean? Like, mostly is women there. And a lot of that is because women, more than men, not to say men don't, but women tend to be more connected to spirit, just naturally. Like, that's why we have, as they say, the women's intuition. That yin essence, that feminine energy helps us to be more aligned with spirit. I'm not saying that men can't do it, they can. But for a lot of them, they have to get out their head to do it. And unfortunately for a lot of us as women, because we grow up in Western culture, a lot of us have to get out of our heads to do it. All right. So if this is not ringing true for you, if you don't feel like you have all this like bubbling over amount of sexual energy, it's fine. Definitely not alone. And a lot of it is because our yin energy is deficient. As I mentioned, being yin or feminine is not valued in this culture. And what the ancients understood and understand is the yin energy, the feminine energy has the power. It's kind of like if you imagine an iceberg, and I don't have the slide, but if you imagine an iceberg, you see the tip of the iceberg, that's kind of like, you can see like that's the masculine energy, that's the part that we see, right? And everything underneath that water is all that ice. That's the feminine energy that represents the subconscious. That's the part we don't see. And that's the part that we have to connect to, right? This feminine part, because it is the subconscious that basically rules our lives, and rules what we attract and what we manifest. So when we slow down, when we get into our feminine energy, then we can program our spirit to manifest whatever it is that we want. And that's the power of feminine energy. So the last blockage I'm going to discuss is number 3. Get some water. being disconnected from the womb. So let's talk about that. So in Tantra and sacred sexuality, the womb is our inner creatrix. The womb is not just about the physical organ of the uterus, but it's about what the womb represents on an energetic and spiritual level. So the womb has the power to bring forth life and death physically and spiritually. The womb holds the mysteries of life in her darkness, right? The womb is considered to be extremely holy because literally the womb is a gateway for how life comes into this planet. Nobody is coming here except through the body of a woman. And this is also why the ancients really held feminine energy in women in high regard. So just like the moon, right, our womb goes through certain phases. Our fertility phases are similar to the moon. We grow, we ripen, right, ovulation, and then things are released. If you don't get pregnant, we release the blood through our menses. So this is similar to the cycle of the moon. When the moon is dark, we don't see it, and then gradually becomes full, right? Bright full moon is similar to, it's like ovulation. That's how the ancients saw it. And then the moon begins to wane. Okay, so our bodies go through a similar 28-day cycle like the moon. This is why the goddess and feminine energy has always been connected to the moon. And she's a sacred portal of transformation. So as women, we have been fed a lot of lies that our wombs are destined to bring us pain through childbirth and menstruation. Many of us often were taught that our reproductive organs are nasty and they're dirty and unclean, and menstruation, if you know, as a woman, menstruation makes you dirty, it makes you nasty, right? You're not clean. But this is, once again, very different than how the ancients saw it. When a woman is awakened sensually and sexually to her feminine energy and power, she develops a positive connection with her womb. And she knows that her womb is her creative power center. And from here, she can birth and create what she wants in her life. Not just children, which are great and beautiful for us to birth, but actually we can create the love, the abundance that we want. Careers, right? Books. We can birth all types of things with this creative energy. But when we're disconnected from our womb, we experience pain. We experience disease. Heartbreak and unhealed trauma can flow down to the womb. And a lot of women, especially women of color, especially Black women actually have are more likely to get fibroids than women of other races. And I believe personally that's because we have a lot of unhealed trauma that's been passed down from generation to generation, and trauma that we re-experience as well. And, you know, in our culture, unfortunately, we're not taught to discuss trauma or, you know, the negative things that happen. Things are kept hush, sexual abuse, rape, all of that is kind of buried, and we don't discuss it. And I think now it's getting better in terms of people going to therapy and things like that. But, you know, so many women in our mother's generation and our mother's generation, they ain't talking to nobody about what was going on. They just kept it moving because they were focused upon survival. However, it's a new day, it's 2020, we can make different choices. So when you experience heartbreak, trauma, a lot of that becomes stagnant energy, negative energy that can cause things like heavy, painful menses, heavy bleeding, painful cramps, fibroid tumors, endometriosis. And when our woman is in a state of disease, she's trying to call our attention to her, right? She's like, look, something happened, we need to deal with this, we need to find out how to heal this, right? It's like the womb is trying to get our attention so that we can heal. Our wombs are crying out to be the power centers that they are designed to be. So in Tantra, our womb and our vagina is referred to as the yoni, which I mentioned. And yoni does not just mean the genitals or the vulva, though it does refer to that. it translates to mean sacred space, a divine passageway. As I mentioned, the yoni is literally worship, but she is seen as a representation of the goddess. And I will say the penis is worshipped too. The penis is called the lingam, but we talk about yonis today. But both men and women's reproductive organs are seen to be holy and beautiful and sacred. But the yoni definitely is, because it's symbolic of the mother energy of the divine feminine. Yonis are worshipped and held in high regard. And you see the woman, this picture here, she's kind of squatting and, you know, it's like something's going into her yoni, like stimulating it. And in Tantra, all women are seen as the embodiment of the goddess Shakti. And as I mentioned, men who wanted to be enlightened, they had to find a woman to initiate them with her sacred yoni first, okay? So it was this idea that if you're a woman, if you are female, you are a reflection of the goddess, because you have easier access to feminine energy than yin energy than a typical man, right? Generally speaking. So that energy was worshipped. It was seen as special, seen as holy. Okay. So when we are, so to summarize, because I think people have Q&As soon. When we are less stressed and connected to our divine feminine energy, especially our womb power, then we have the power to manifest whatever it is that we want. And a huge thing that we have to do as women is to deprogram ourselves so that we're not seeing ourselves as less than a man. We're not seeing ourselves as cursed and that our wombs are cursed and it's only to have babies and to bring us pain, but to actually see us as reflections of divinity, of divine feminine energy and divine feminine power, to actually see us as a goddess. So this is why I named my company Let Go, Let Goddess, because we need that, right? This is what we need to do, especially in this day and age where so many times and so many things are changing. It is time for women to reclaim our divine inheritance, right? Our divine power, our feminine energy and sacred sexual power, so that we can live our best life, right? Manifest that juiciness, the abundance and love that we deserve. We have to know our own worthiness. Okay, and I'm inviting everybody. I'm going to share the link in the chat to download. I have, to help you with this, I have a free meditation. It's called Essential Goddess Activation Meditation. And also when you sign up for this, then you'll be on my mailing list, and you will get, you know, information about the next time that I'm doing a class. One of the classes that I did and Nikisha did was the Central Guidance Boot Camp. So that class should be starting soon, but I don't have the exact date yet because I just did a 30-day self-care break. But if you sign up, you will get the free meditation. And then when you're on my list, when I'm opening the doors for Central Goddess Boot Camp, you will get the information.